A man's worth isn't written in ink, but in the way he keeps walking when no one is clapping. That line stuck in my head the night it all began. Picture a sleek glass boardroom marble table shining under cold lights. Everyone in their $1,000 suits, laughter curled up in their throats, just waiting for permission to burst out. At the head of that table was Veronica Hale, billionaire CEO of Northcrest Capital, a woman who built her empire with sharp heels and sharper words. In her hand, held between two fingers like it might stain her reputation, was my resume. Daniel Brooks, she said, her eyebrow cocked high. Former financial director, currently employed as janitorial staff. She paused, lips curling, and then with a laugh that could slice bone, she added, "What's next?" A cover letter in Comic Sans. The whole room followed her cue, chuckling the way people do when they're terrified not to. I stood outside that glass door with a mop in my hand, my reflection staring back at me, while her words cut through like knives in fog. I didn't flinch. I'd polished that floor before any of them arrived, smelling of expensive perfume and false confidence. I knew every squeaky panel under their chairs. But that night was the first time in years I had submitted something that wasn't a maintenance report, and it was laughed at. I turned and walked away. No outburst, no defense, just the quiet click of my boots on tile. Downstairs in the break room that smelled of bleach and burnt coffee, my daughter waited. Emma, 6 years old, legs swinging crayons scattered around her sketchbook. She looked up, eyes wide, and slid a paper across the table. She had drawn me a badge that read, "Daniel Brooks Floor Hero." I smiled, though my chest tightened. "Thanks, Peanut," I told her, "but I think my superhero cape's in the laundry tonight." She tilted her head, serious beyond her years. "Why did you give that lady your resume if she was just going to be mean?" I hesitated. "Sometimes you knock on a door not because you think it'll open, but because you need to prove to yourself you're not afraid of closed ones anymore." She frowned, but she laughed. "People laugh," I said softly, "when they don't understand something brave." Upstairs, Veronica tossed my resume aside like scrap paper, but someone else at that table didn't laugh. Jason Miller, one of her senior analysts, picked it up again. He remembered my name. Years ago, back when he was just an intern barely eating 3 meals a week, I'd left an apple on his desk without a word. He never forgot that. He also remembered the way I used to walk into meetings, a storm in a suit, unshakably ethical, before I vanished from the industry. The truth was simple. After my wife Rachel died from a heart condition, because an insurance company wrote her off as not cost-effective, I couldn't keep working in a world that calculated lives like line items. I resigned the next day, picked up a broom. I'd rather mop floors with dignity than build empires on broken promises. But life has a cruel sense of humor. The very woman who mocked me, the same Veronica Hale, was about to come face to face with her past. A week later, she was summoned to Brentfield Haven, an orphanage that had once been her childhood home. Its roof sagged, pipes leaked, walls groaned like they were tired of standing. The board demanded she deliver not just numbers, but heart. Heart, a word she'd avoided her whole life. She tried. She pulled blueprints, spreadsheets, forecasts. None of it felt alive. And then, almost against her will, she found herself reading my resume again. Slowly this time. And she realized buried in between the bullet points was something she couldn't manufacture with money, a blueprint for hope. That's when the message came. "Mr. Brooks, if you're free, I'd like to hear your thoughts on community-based budgeting. Brentfield is at risk, and I'm running out of people who care more than they bill." I didn't answer right away. I finished sweeping steady strokes across the tile. Some doors creak, some slam, but either way, they open. The next morning I sat across from Veronica in a conference room designed to make men like me feel small. She looked me dead in the eye. "I read your resume 3 times before I stopped reacting to what you are now and started noticing what you used to build." I folded my hands. Most people don't get past the uniform. "Neither did I," she admitted. "But Brentfield Haven is dying, and I don't need another consultant. I need someone who's seen both sides of the hallway." I leaned back. "Why me?" Her jaw tightened. Because I left that place with a suitcase full of fury. I want to rebuild it with something better. And you're the only one who writes about funding models like they're about people, not profits. I studied her, not angry, not forgiving either. You mocked me 2 days ago. I did, and I'm not proud of it. But I don't want that moment to be the last page between us. I paused, then nodded once. I'll help, but only if I can walk the halls myself, feel the ghosts before I draw the blueprints. That weekend, Emma and I rode with Veronica back to Brentfield. To her, it was a haunted memory. To my daughter, it was a castle waiting to be drawn. Inside, the smell of old crayons and older heartbreak filled the halls. Emma found a quiet girl named Lila, who muttered she didn't make friends because they all got sent away. My daughter, unfazed, slid her sketchbook over and said, "That's okay. You can borrow one of mine." I fixed leaky faucets and taught kids how to budget with Skittles. Veronica, clipboard in hand, tried to keep her distance, but I watched the walls around her crack each time she saw Emma giggling with Lila, or a boy daring to smile because someone finally listened. And then, just as the place began to breathe again, we almost lost it. One evening, Lila's chair at dinner sat empty. Emma found a note on her bed. "If I leave first, maybe it won't hurt as much when they send me away." The panic that ripped through the orphanage. I'll never forget it. Veronica and I split up flashlights, cutting through the night. Hours later, under the dripping awning of an abandoned house, I found her knees tucked, clutching her backpack like a shield. "I wasn't stealing," she whispered. "I just wanted a place no one could send me away from." I sat down beside her on the wet concrete. My wife used to say some places aren't haunted by ghosts, but by promises never kept. You deserve better than that. When Veronica knelt and opened her arms, Lila finally broke sobbing into the chest of a woman who had once been just like her. For the first time in years, Veronica cried too, not for Lila, but for the little girl she once was. That night, we walked back hand in hand, Lila between us. Emma ran barefoot to meet us at the door, hugging her friend so tight you'd think she could glue her to this world by force of will alone. The next morning, I laid out a proposal. Not spreadsheets, but a budget model that measured more than dollars. Emotional engagement logs, community integration scores, creative revenue loops where kids sold their art and saved half for their future. I told them, feelings are the facility. If you budget dignity into every line item, donors don't have to be begged, they'll beg you to be part of it. The boardroom fell silent, and for once they listened. The plan was approved unanimously. Brentfield Haven began to bloom again. Fresh paint on the walls, laughter in the yard, kids daring to believe they might stay. Emma drew me a new resume on crayon paper, listener. Fixer of broken feelings, cleaner of sadness. And at the bottom she scrawled, "My dad doesn't fix spreadsheets. He fixes places where hearts get left behind." One afternoon, Veronica handed me that drawing. "Would you mind if we made this your official resume?" she asked. I chuckled. "Even if it has no numbers, especially because it doesn't," she said, eyes softer than I'd ever seen. Some nights after the children fell asleep, we sat together on the porch. She admitted once I used to think leadership was about control, about being unshakable. But maybe real leadership is making space for someone else's quiet. I looked at her, and for the first time since Rachel died, I let someone's words land without deflecting them. Weeks later, at Brentfield's first open house, parents and neighbors stopped at the entrance, staring at what hung framed on the wall. Not my old resume typed in Times New Roman, but Emma's, the one scribbled in crayon. Below it, a plaque read, "In honor of those who heal without a title, and the children who remind us what really matters." I didn't need applause. My life was my application now, and every heart that dared to trust again. That was the job offer. But here's what I keep asking myself, and what I want you to think about too. Why is it we live in a world where a man in a suit gets a seat at the table, but a man with a mop has to fight to prove his worth? How many people have we written off because we couldn't see past their uniform? Tell me in the comments. Have you ever been judged for the work you do or seen someone underestimated just because of their title? Was it fair? Or just another sign that our society still measures the wrong things? Because maybe the biggest resumes aren't written on paper at all. Maybe they're written in the lives we choose to show up for, even when nobody's clapping.